Hello, KFC SuperCoaches, and welcome to the Round 17 edition of KFC SuperCoach TV. This is the Phantom speaking. I'm back. You might see the King Super Footy Peyton here in the building, but when you have the 134th ranked coach in the side, he doesn't stay on the bench. That's a message from Mark McVeigh as well. I'll be the man to run the show today, and the race to KFC SuperCoach glory is on. The business end of the year is here, but it's becoming more difficult for KFC SuperCoaches to make up ground. The trades are becoming more difficult, obviously, as they dwindle down. So a big show. We'll talk about some strategy, some cheap targets, luxury trading, when and when not to do it. And, of course, we'll take plenty of your questions. We'll go in ranking order. Our Peyton has come with a charge, so has Dan Batten, but we'll talk to the people's champ, the GOAT. Dan Begala, it's been a while since you and I hosted a show, but welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I guess the real GOAT is clearly Maroya's magic out there, Selby. I guess he's 18th overall. He's won fantasy. If he does the treble, then I think he's really solidified himself up there with the Tom Bradys of the world, the Michael Jordans, as a genuine GOAT of this game. But team's going really well. Finally get English back, which is really exciting. I've got a full squad. I had it since the final bye, which is great. But I've got Isaac Heaney floating around at F7, and it's a bit of a weird spot to be because I didn't really want to have that extra seventh player just now in the forward line, but necessity dictated that last week with Dogger being a late withdrawal with his knee injury. So that was a real pain in the proverbial, to be honest. It's pretty unfortunate timing for me, but now I've got an extra player and I've only got 3 trades. So you can probably hear the baby in the background. He's really taken me by storm, that little fella. But, otherwise, team's going really well. Very easy VCC this week, going Clary into Neil. Neil loves Essendon, and Clary just loves being chas mode. So they're the 2 things I'm going to do this week. And I feel like when Supercoach gets to this point of the year, the anxiety levels drop quite a lot because there's no decisions to be made. You've got no trades. Your team's finished, and it's really just let the boys play. Let them run out. Let them go out there and do their thing. So exciting times, but hoping to hang on to my 3 trades and Isaac Heaney for the rest of the season. 7 weeks. And as they say in Gattaca, I say this all the time, never save anything for the swim back. And that's, I guess, where I am right now with a lot of you boys as well. Both sub 3 or 4 trades at the moment. So exciting times.
Very good, GOAT. Nice to see you still using that line. I reckon you've whipped it out every episode. It's about round 8.
I started in year 12. I've never forgotten 14 years later.
Oh, we've got a dog now.
There's Lenny. Lenny's here. Now, you guys, Dan Begala, you and I don't have many trades left, but Dan Button, the famous Dan Button, does have a few trades left. He's in an interesting spot to be in, and it's good to have a bit of diversity here. What are you thinking with your trades? How many do you have left, and how are you going to use it? It's a bit of an advantage, I guess, at this point of the year. Begala and I are saving them. Anything that might pop up, you're trying to be a bit more aggressive at this point.
Just quickly on Begala, he says he's got a kid there. We hear the crying in the background. I can't see a hair out of place, which obviously has just been a staple of Begala's get up for the last 6 or 7 years in KFC SuperCoach. But on to my team with 5 trades left. I had 7 last week, and I traded in Wits, which is a bit of a regret in hindsight. I could have gone a Riley O'Brien up against a pretty depleted Melbourne ruck setup, including one Melbourne ruckman who's just absolutely terrible, who we know. But no, but in all seriousness, though, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing this week because I could hold on. I listened to the Eradicator, who gives some great advice on the Phantoms lair, and he was saying that if you've got less than 6 or 7 trades, you shouldn't be trading this week, and those trades could be really advantageous in the run home. But after watching Jaden Short with plenty of midfield time on Sunday against a pretty weakened West Coast, or I guess, again, their players back, but, they haven't been great this year, lucky to score an 80, I'm considering going Jaden Short to Jordan Dawson up against the Hawks. I've got a fairly good run home, and he's just been absolutely flying. And I feel like him and Laird and English as well are going to be the ones that kill me in the run home, not having them. So if I can alleviate a negative pod and get rid of a popular player that a lot of people own and is underperforming, I could be able to make up some rank that way. But it does leave me in the same position as you guys, where I sort of have my hands tied after that trade. I've also got Dusty Cameron to worry about as well when Brodie Grundy comes back. So yeah, I'm certainly not settled, and would love some advice from you guys and from the public as well.
Very good, Dan. I do like that aggressive move. I think Jaden Short gave up 62 points to Jordan Dawson last week. I think if you go back over the 3 weeks, it's probably up to about 160. I reckon what you've given up from Jaden Short to Jordan Dawson. Similar story with Jack Sinclair on the weekend, 68 points from Jaden Short. But how are you placed? What do you think, obviously, of Jaden Short owner too? What's your plan ahead of round 17?
Quickly on Short, I think he's had 3 in a row in the 80s, and Dawson's gone 130 plus in each of those games. So, yeah, you can do the maths on how many points you're losing. And 7 rounds to go, that's a lot of points you could catch up. I have Short and I don't have Dawson. I think that's probably a big part of the equation. If you don't have one of the big 3 in defence, which is Sinclair, Sicily and Dawson, there seem to be clear standouts. And Dawson is just about the hottest player in the comp right now. I don't think I could use 2 trades, though, to get rid of him. So I'm down to 4. So I think I'm just going to have to wear it. As you say, playing in the midfield's not really suiting him from a SuperCoach point of view. He's still getting plenty of the ball, but under a lot more pressure when he gets rid of it. So he's really just throwing it on the boot and skying it into the forward 50, getting a lot of inside 50s, and sort of it's a bit of a lottery whether it's a goal assist or a turnover at the moment. But hopefully Richmond's draw is not too bad. They've got North Melbourne next week is one game where you could imagine him going pretty well. So I think I'm just going to have to cop that one. I'm down to 4 trades, and I think that keeping trades could really be a big win. I can see people who've really gone hard so far. You know, we see people out there in the SuperCoach community who are down to only 1 or 2, or I think Dan mentioned there's someone in the top 10 who's got 0 trades already. So if anything, the last few weeks are any guide to what's going to happen. There could be a lot of donuts going around for multiple weeks in the run home, and there's a chance for people lower in the rankings to really overtake some of those players, and that could happen in private leagues as well. So I'm definitely mindful of that, and maybe trying to hang on to 3 or 4 if I can. But my issue this week is Braden Pruce, who I think you were referencing earlier with the Spike McVeigh comment about leaving him in the garage, but he has left him in the garage at the moment. Yeah, exactly.
The garage man.
He played. He was available last week, did not get selected, played in the VFL, scored about 150 SuperCoach points, I think. So what happens this week? I've been covering that with, I brought Todd Goldstein in a couple of weeks ago, been able to move him up into the ruck and then cover the donut with Maurice Rioli Jr. / Malcolm Rosas. And I kind of got away with that for 1 week when I got about a 70 out of Rioli, but last week it was like 29. So I think the calculation is that it's worth using 2 trades to replace a 30 or 40 with a primo ruckman. It would take me 2 to get Pruce up to Tim English is the man I've got in mind, although Dan on our podcast mentioned Max Gawn, who I hadn't really thought about. He's basically the same price and he is playing tonight. But I think with him and Jackson in the same team, and we're not 100% sure how Simon Goodwin will use those 2, maybe he's gone back into it. Who knows? Although you can definitely see him scoring big. He scored 159 in his past 2 games against Geelong, so he loves playing the Cats. Probably English, but then that would be, finished team and 2 trades left, and definitely the last 2 are only for, cover zeros or even, multiple week zeros at this stage.
Yes, Bruce, obviously a big issue. The latest comment from Mark McVeigh, I think, today was he was very pleased with Matty Flynn.
Okay.
No. Matty Flynn. So that's, but good to see Bruce get through a full VFL game, which McVeigh said was part of the reason they didn't pick him last week, because they wanted to see him get through another full game. So we'll wait and see. I do feel a lot less stressed, though, with Braden Pruce out the side. I traded him to Rob last week. But just quickly before we get into some SuperCoach, there's a few zingers come through here. I think we have to address them straight away. Geordie Bars asked about 6 questions. We'll get to his Oliver comments soon. But question for Dan Magala, what hair product do you use? It's impeccable.
There was a thing I used to use back in the day called Uppercut. It's pretty trendy stuff, but I haven't used anything for a while. I just go for a run, have a shower, and that's about it, really. It's just probably the natural oils running through the locks. So good question, JB. And JB, you've done it again.
You're famous for your artwork, Dan Magala. Dan Batten, what is that behind you?
So we've spoken a bit about the pay grades between Dan Magala, working at the bank versus me, just a humble guy starting out in the journalism industry. That's sort of I guess a figure of with the artwork. He's obviously spending a bit more
scale
on the artwork, whereas I've just got the very small one. But no, it's actually painted by my girlfriend by a Kmart, I think it was, and she's put them up around the house. So we've actually got a lot of plants around the house as well. So we've got good feng shui going on, but I'm not so sure about the small one up there. Probably could do with some company.
You might have to do a roaming Dan Batten around the house. Check out the flowers, check out the portraits.
Oh, plenty of plants, mate. It's not. It's again another thing that's above my pay grade. So yeah, I'll leave her to sort that out because I've got no idea, no fashion sense whatsoever.
Very good. Let's move on from Dan Batten's fashion sense. Anthony asks here, who brought in Luke Jackson last week and do we keep him now that Maxi is back? I did. I've kept him. I'm going to loop him. A bit lucky than a few. That was the plan, to have him as a sort of an F7, F6 loop option when Max came back. But Dan Magala, what do you think for punters out there who might have to play him on field? What do we think his role is now they're both back in? He was so good a couple of weeks ago. Does that give him more ruck time?
Yeah, I suspect with the syndesmosis affecting Max, they're going to ease him back in. He'll probably play a bit more forward, predominantly forward, I suspect. And sort of how they did earlier in the season, I think that will be the mix they'll do, 30-70 sort of arrangement for Max, with a lot of the work be shouldered by Dogger. But then you've got to also overlay that with Dogger's got an MCL or something like that. So he's pretty sore, or he probably just copped a knock at training or something like that, and they didn't want to risk it. But I'd be comfortable as an owner, as a former owner of Dogger Jackson, that you're probably going to get 80 each week. I suspect that's what he's capable of. At a bare minimum, the trough of his scores is about 80. But if he gets more time on the ball and he does what he did against, can't recall who they were playing back in, I think it was Port Adelaide. He was fantastic that night, or Brisbane Lions. But I'd say just play him. You're pretty lucky there, fans, to be able to keep him. I got forced because I didn't really have a solution outside of him to shift off, and I did do that. And as such, I don't have availability of him. But I've got English, so I've got 3 ruckmen anyway, focused on Darcy, Witts, and English in the forward line. And with Heaney at F7, I've really got a lot of flexibility through that mixture of my team, so it's fine. But I think Dogger's capable of 80 at a bare minimum. That's his low point, I suspect. And he'll be trying to pump up that contract he gets, no doubt. And obviously with Freo and West Coast, the potential suitors, he's not going to be dropping the ball on the run home. I think he'll be putting his best foot forward, as they say. I think he'll be a good option for those that were able to keep him. Yeah,
so I think we'll wait and see tonight. And 80-point line is probably the bare minimum, without that extra ruck work, which you could get given what Max is coming back from.
Yep.
Jaden Short owners here. Our trade guide this week, haven't seen it, heraldsun.com.au, codesports.com.au. We looked at the top 11 bargains from here, and a lot of KFC SuperCoaches don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of trades. So some will be looking for injury replacements for an Aaron Hall or Tom Stewart, say, or some will be making money off an underperforming primo. Out Jaden Short to Stephen May, $379K. Do you like that sort of move? Do you like May as an option, regardless of the short move?
Yeah, I do. I think the proviso to answer to nearly all these questions is going to be, how many trades do you have left? And if you were down to 2 or 3, I probably wouldn't do it. But if you had 5 or 6 or 7, then I think this is definitely a viable option. Yeah, the second part of that, Rioli to the Bonds, you're probably getting 80 plus points a week from that move. So if it helps with that, and May could outscore Short anyway, I definitely think he's the best value. If you can't in defence afford, a Dawson, Sinclair, or Sicily type. Maybe Bailey Dale I got last week was really good. He's still around 545, I think. But then there's not a lot below that, Whitfields and these kind of guys. I'd almost go all the way down to May because, as you say, 379K. He's only that cheap because he had the concussion. There's a really good stat in the SuperCoach Plus article this week about kick-ins, and he's taken 89 off the top of my head. I would think he's had 89 kick-ins for the year and played on from 86 of them. So that's obviously where he gets a fair bit of his score, and then always good for some intercept marks and that as well. So looking at his scoring, he's been pretty solid for 85 plus pretty much every game. You're not necessarily going to get a massive score, although he does have that in him potentially. Mm-hmm. But if that allows you to then turn a Rioli into Bond, I think I'd definitely be doing that. And from here, Short. I think I looked up Jaden Short based on 3-round or 5-round averages. He's about the 45th ranked defender. So. If you could get a 90-plus average out of him for the rest of the year, I think that's about the best you could hope for.
Would you endorse, you brought him in last week, would you endorse Phil Curran's move here, Aaron Hall to Bailey Dale?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, Aaron, people who brought in Aaron Hall, I think it's about 7,000 trades. That's just shocking. We know he hasn't had a great run with injury, but to go down 2 minutes into the game is, couldn't have gone much worse. But Bailey Dale's, I think last week was his highest score of the year, 134. And he doesn't go that big that often, but he's like, I think his lowest score is 87 or so. And he scored 110, between 110 and 120 about 7 or 8 times. So just super reliable. And with Caleb Daniel out for a little while at the Dogs, they look to give it to him whenever they can. Such a great user of the footy, always kicks it, plays on from kick-ins as well. So, I think he's a really nice option.
Yeah, I agree. And again, if you can't, reiterating the point, if you can't get up to the big few in defence, then if you trade Harron all down to a Stephen May, give you some cash, some flexibility with your bank account over the next coming weeks too. We saw May take 12 intercept possessions total and 7 of the marks, I think, against the Crows. Now, not all sides are going to kick it like the Crows do inside 50, but we saw May average 97 points per game before he was concussed a few weeks ago as well. So great buying, 379K. Dan Bagala. Now, a few teams also have Dustin Martin this week, who obviously will miss 1 to 2 weeks as well with injury. And the cheap forwards under 500K come into that equation. And also for those looking and lucky enough to want to get a loophole option in there, you've got Isaac Heaney. But what do you think, Travis's question here? Cheap forwards under 500K. We've spoken a bit about Kitty Coleman. What do you think?
I like Kitty Coleman because obviously he's shown signs the last few weeks. And in game last week with Sorko going down and Rich going down, he sort of really came to the fore. He really sort of had a lot of kick-ins, dominated intercept possessions, probably one of his best performances. I think he had 20 touches or something, or even more, 23. I like him. I don't think, for me, honestly, having a completed team, I probably wouldn't be looking at anyone sub 500 grand anyway. I'd be really looking to get those big dogs, being Bontempelli, English, Brody, if you don't have him. That's all I'd be really looking to get. Or maybe putting an eye, casting it forward to thinking when Tim Mitchell releases his next DPP article, who are those superstars in the midfield that are about to be eligible for those roles? So I'd be cleaning out the forward line to make space for them. But I don't really like any of those. Taranto comes with risk. He's coming off a pretty bad back. Heaney obviously comes with risk. He got a massive knock to the quad in the first quarter against us, and that slowed him down. He's been performing pretty poorly the last fortnight. And then the other name out there, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's the sort of thing.
Tomahawk.
Rosie, Tomahawk. Yeah, I mean, Tomahawk will probably push for the Coleman, right? He'll probably get close to it. But what's Jeremy Cameron at price that he had 30
He's
and
over
4?
500, I think. Isn't
Okay,
he?
Yeah,
so he's over
527.
Okay,
He's
so
gone real well.
I mean, I'd still be looking at Bont. He's the player. There's 3 players that I look at my team every week, and I think, geez, I'm out of money on those blokes. And that's Bontempelli, Laird or Mills in the midfield, and then it was probably Stewart or Dawson down back. So they're the ones I'm missing from my side. And I think if I was in that position, as per Travis, I'd be trying to find that additional capital to get to Bont and get to the Englishes of the world if he shows some really good performance tonight or tomorrow night. I just don't really like a lot of the fellas sub 500K. And the best example of that is Isaac Heaney. He's languishing at F7. He might not even play for my side for the next fortnight until he really proves he wants to play in the ones. He plays in the reserves for now for me, unfortunately.
Well,
Oh,
zero centre bounce.
Yeah.
Interesting one.
He's
a
over
nice
500K.
pod. 0 centre bounces for Isaac Heaney, I think, in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah,
A bit of a concern. And then on the other hand, Connor Rosie, 482K, I think, comes into this equation. He's ranked number 2 at the power for centre bounces since about round 6 behind Ollie Wine. So he showed again on the weekend a slow start, but kicked 2 goals from late in the third quarter onwards, brought the power home, almost pinched it, finished with 96 KFC SuperCoach points. Doesn't need a lot of footy to impact the game, we know that, so I don't mind Connor Rosie in that. But just quickly on the DPPs before we move on, Hunter said, what's the news on Sam Walsh getting DPP next week? I've just put out the latest article on the new DPPs, which we will get next week. You can see a few of the big names in line. A couple of little nuggets. Sam Walsh won't be getting DPP next week. I think he's at 28% time spent forward, and the threshold we know is 35%. Harry Himmelberg, probably the biggest name, obviously the highest averaging forward over the last 5 rounds, will probably pretty obviously become a defender forward ahead of SuperCoach round 18. So interesting one. He becomes an even more enticing option, I guess, if you are looking for that final upgrade. And you do say you kept a Paddy McCartan, you kept the Sam de Koning as well. So it could be good for your cover.
Kitty Coleman.
Yeah.
Kitty Coleman, exactly. The nice swing there. Dan Batten, we speak about luxury trades. You're in a position here to do so. Patrick Cripps struggling a little bit, a very popular player, I think in the top 5 most owned in the competition. These are the guys that you're got to jump off to get a bit of a jump. Any thoughts for you to do that? And do we like Jack Steele? Have we seen enough in the 2 weeks back?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, I have looked at essentially the two that I've zeroed in on, and even before his performance on the weekend, Christian Petrarca was sort of in the gun, but obviously was back to his absolute best against the Crows. But Jaden Short and Cripps are the two. But then you sort of look at, I think, how many points you can get potentially from trading them out or upgrading them, where like a Short, even though it is wasting a fair bit of money, Short to Dawson, the last 3 weeks, that's 50 points. And I reckon on average, you're probably getting at least 30. Whereas with Cripps, you probably see him averaging about 100 from here. And at most, I think Steele averages 120. So you're probably only gaining 20 points. It is 20K though. So like it's certainly worth a look. But I think Steele he wasn't going too great against the Blues until he kicked that goal. It was either in the 3rd or 4th where he sort of really rocketed and then just hit the ton. So I'm not sure Steele was absolutely at his, I guess his real best that he showed in the back end of last year, and may take a little bit of time to ease. Obviously, it is a shoulder blow. It's been 2 low tons for him. So, yeah, I wouldn't be rushing to bring him in, but he is at a great price, no doubt, 440K. But I guess I reckon to trade him to Cripps, you probably got to have more trades than I do at the moment. So probably like 6 or 7 trades to do that. And then especially if it allows you to potentially, if you've got a bit of money in the bank, for example, you trade Cripps to a Steele, and then you can use some extra cash to potentially upgrade Short or another player like a Heaney to that sort of top 6 or even like a top 2 or 3 premium in that line. So, yeah, I think he will be a pretty good pod in the run home, but I'm not sure if I can justify a trade from Cripps to Steele just at this point.
Dan Begala, don't have enough trades left to make a move, but he, as a Blues fan, watched him closely. Are you concerned about a Paddy Cripps? If you had enough trades, would you move him on?
No, I wouldn't. I just don't think I would, because I think he's capable of just 110 points per week, like averaging what he's probably scoring right now. I guess with Sam Walsh returning to the side, it really has impacted his output somewhat. And I guess Chera coming in, Hewitt, everyone, we're sort of back to our full squad of middies running around. And we've lost a bit of ruck sort of dominance in the form of Tom de Koning doing a cracking job and really coming of age. Baby Gorn, I call him. But I feel like Cripps is probably hitting that patch. In Melbourne, it gets really cold. It's July. It's getting very cold. And he's probably in that period of malaise where all the players are just getting up for games, really. They're just sort of working their backsides off Monday to Friday to get up for the game. And we just had a few tricky games recently. Like obviously losing to St Kilda wasn't a great outcome, but I think he still scored 90. It's just he's not starting games like he was at the start of the year, and he's also not really ticking the scoreboard over. That's the thing that we're sort of missing out on at the moment. At the start of the year, he was a great Adonis. He was Kudafides reincarnated. He was going forward and leading out of the goal square and taking marks as if he was, like a hulking centre-half forward. But that's sort of dissipated recently. So maybe Voss needs to utilise him a bit more forward of centre. But I remember watching David King. He analyses the game pretty well. They basically gave Cripps a license to roam the field and attack and use that asset however they liked, and it was really go forward and hurt. And maybe teams have worked out how to exploit it. Maybe they've just gone, look, he's going to sneak forward. He doesn't like to do the defensive stuff. He might do the inside tackling work, but he doesn't do the chasing. And then I guess he goes forward and teams have worked him out. The better defender lands on him and he can't score like he was at the start of the year. So I would hold. Like, I'm not concerned. Again, I've got 3 trades, so I'm not going to worry about trying to find 5 or 10 points per week. I mean, it would be nice, but it's what you'll find is when the carnage hits, and it will hit, it'll be like Stranger Things when Hawkins gets taken over. But it'll be like that. So you're going to be ready for it. And when it hits, if you've got trades up your sleeve, all it takes is one donut and you are back in the game if you can trade and protect yourself from that donut. 100 points in a spot. If you can free yourself up and protect that spot for 2 weeks, you are back in the top 500, top 1,000, whatever your goal is. And that's the way I look at it. I want to have those trades for when the carnage hits, like round 23 or Heaney's Henry, 001 Vecna. He might be actually. Looks a bit like a Vecna.
Yeah.
So
I reckon Heaney's a bit better looking than Henry. That's stiff.
That's right. But yeah, you should. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I'm going to hold Cripps. He is the least of my worries. I've got Ridley at D6, and he's a problem. He's getting outscored by Wirt and Vanessa Amorossi. That's Massimo D'Ambrosio. It's been really hard, but I've just ridden the Ridley ride, and it's a bit of a pain in the backside. But here we are with Nan. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm going to ride him home.
Out on the midfield, we spoke about bargains before. We pinpointed a few at the start of the week. Patrick Dangerfield, never seen him this cheap. Would you endorse a move for him coming off back from injury?
I think Adrian might be. I get this mess mixed up in my head too sometimes, but you'd probably be looking at an M9 maybe to try and loop him off the bench potentially for his scores. But I don't mind it. I mean, what was his first game back last week after about how many weeks was he out? About 10 weeks out or something. And he only played 62% of the game and still nearly tunned. But that was against North and down at the Cattery. So they play, looking at the Geelong draw, they play another 4 games at home before the end of the year, including West Coast in the last round, which the Eagles obviously looking a bit better now than they have been earlier in the year. But I think by round 23, maybe they'll be out of gas, hopefully. So I wouldn't be shocked if he produced, a couple of those 150 type scores between here and the end of the year. I don't think you would rely on him for, 110 every week, but, Geelong's going pretty well. They need to warm up for finals. He needs to get his body right and warm up. I don't think they'd rest him between now and then. I mean, there's only 7 rounds to go and he needs to be on firing on all cylinders for September. So, yeah, I don't mind it at his price, but, it's another one of these ones where you'd have to have a few trades up your sleeve to consider it.
Yeah, and we know he's probably not the same player he used to be, but if you take out the injury-affected score last year, he averaged 111 points still per game, and on the weekend against North, 62% game time. Just ease into it with 19 disposals and 96 KFC SuperCoach points, just over a half. So I don't mind it, definitely, if you're in a position to get him there at M9. I think I agree with Al. There'll be a big score or two in the run home that hopefully you can get on. I think this is sort of a question for everyone. A few KFC SuperCoaches out there asking it. Matt's got one more spot to fill in his forward line, has all the big names. Jezza Cameron we discussed, but Tim English or Tom Liberatore. Libba is the second highest averaging player in the forward line over the past 5 rounds behind Himmelberg. English we know obviously hasn't played. Start with you, Dan Batten. Tim English or Tom Liberatore if you were to make one more move?
It's a tricky one because you look at Tim English, his last 3 games against the Swans. He has a ridiculous record against them. So this year he managed the 152 points. Admittedly, that was when Tom Hickey got injured after half-time. So he was rucking against a lesser opponent there. But in the previous 2 games, 126 and 145. So, and that was when he was playing more as a forward. So he clearly does dominate against them, and he's got them on Friday night. I'd be tempted as a non-English owner just to wait and see on him, though. If he does go big, then I guess you probably just get him next week. But he does have the 160 break even up against the Swans. He is 605K. Whereas a guy like Libba as well, he's got a great point of difference, really. Like I think he's the 3rd or 4th highest averaging forward for the year, and he's only in 5% of teams. 5% of teams, so 7,900 own him, which is pretty crazy considering he's been really consistent, surprisingly consistent. I think a lot of us overlooked him because others had maybe Bailey Smith, Bont. There's just so many different names there. But I still do, even though he has produced the results all year, you still do wonder what happens when Bailey Smith comes back. But yeah, I don't think you can fold him. Jezza Cameron has been playing further up the ground as well and has been scoring quite well. But he is, he had about 30 touches against North on the weekend, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, I still think that it's probably between English and Libba. And if you could wait a week, I would. But of those 2 at the moment, probably English for me.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way a little bit too. A bit more risk, I think, obviously in the English pick. But if you don't have him now, you obviously don't have some ruck cover potentially. So that sort of works in his favour as well if you need that swing in the run home. Dan Begala quickly, Tim English or Tom Liberatore?
Well, I'm an English owner and I've had him twice this season, funnily enough. But I think his scoring propensity is higher. Like, I do think his ceiling is higher than Libba's. Libba's more consistent. But if you think about it, like on a sample size of this year, he's missed, 7 or 8 games. Can he really miss any more before the season's over? I know he's had a pretty tough run with concussions, but yeah, I mean, like a concussion, he'd be fit as a fiddle right now. He's just been very much precautionally nursed through that period. It's very tight on the 12-day turnaround, and they found out a few days later. So English is averaging 120, and there's a concussion game in there. There's a few other games where he went sub 90. So his upside is unbelievable. And if you come up against an opponent in the finals, they'll be licking their lips if you're not an English holder. But Libba is a great option because Libba, we know, is hungry. He'll thrive tomorrow in the small expanses of the SCG, tight in and under contested mid. So he'll do well. And he's actually hitting the scoreboard quite a bit with his beautiful little snaps from the boundary and doing some great little things. So he's added a bit of craft to his bullocking work. So, Libba is a sleeper that just no one's really taken a bite at because he's got all these guys like Bont and English and Baslanka ahead of him, and he just gets it done. So English for me, if you want upside and you want to really go and chase the rankings pursuit. But look, if you're really steady Eddie and you like to be safe, then Libba's probably a really strong 105 per week type player.
And just quickly on English, just on his upcoming opponents, obviously has a good history against Sydney, but the weeks after that, he's got St Kilda. So you think Paddy Ryder and Marshall. Then he's got Gawn, Reece Stanley, and then Sean Darcy. So it's certainly not a charmed run for him. He does win plenty of footy around the ground, but you wouldn't think he'd be dominating the hit-house advantage. So I think that's another nod to Libba's favour. I'm almost going the other way now and thinking that Libba could be especially for the last 7 weeks, be a really nice pod.
Any differing thoughts on this debate?
Yeah, and it's really hard. I think, like everybody else, are probably not looking at Jezza, and it comes down to the other two guys. I think English, I'll probably bring in this week, so I probably have to say him. And I think he does, in theory, provide that coverage in the ruck, but it hasn't really worked out that well this year. That was the plan for a lot of people, but he's been injured as much as anybody. As we've said, it's been a pretty bad run of luck. I think he had a hamstring into the flu, which put him in hospital, and then an unlucky concussion when Braden Bruce ran over him against the Giants. So you'd hope he avoids all that sort of stuff for the rest of the year. But I just looked up Libba's, sort of durability. He hasn't missed a game this year. He only missed one last year. But then going back before that, he has had a few injury issues over his career. But you'd think he's probably the more reliable guy to just roll out every week and play every game for the rest of the year. But yeah, it's one of those ones that if you're going for the upside, I think it's probably English.
Yeah, well, staying on the forward line here, and one we haven't spoken about, well, I might have missed a little bit, but Isaac Rankin, Max got him at F6, a player who scored 88 points or more in his past 8 matches, I think 3 KFC SuperCoach tons in the past 4 weeks. Do we like him? Would you keep him at F6? Only 3 trade obviously dictates that a little bit, but do you think he can keep scoring to keep your team competitive at F6, Dan Begala?
Well, Rankin's been ranked, I think, he's been ranked like one of the top 2 to 3 small forwards in the comp, like general small forwards in the comp. So, he's doing a really good job up there, and they're starting to tie these blokes in for good contracts, being Lukosius. They've now got due on till 2024. So good things are starting to happen there, and I guess that's why the Pies winning in the wet up there in the slop, their mutters, as they say in Seinfeld, is a really good win. Like, it's a really solid win. It has them 6 on the trot. But Rankin, that's really, for me, that's a bit too contrarian to the rest of the high flyers that are chasing rankings. I think that's a bit too outside the square, and I guess his upside hasn't been as crazy high as some of the other guys out there. So for me, I'd probably just skip Rankin and go, look, he's having a cracking little end to this season, looks to have really improved as a player. Lots of goal assists, lots of score involvements, yada, yada. But for me, I'd be looking elsewhere and still just chasing those top 6. You've got to get as close to that top 6 as you can. Or if you're lucky enough and you land one of these guys a la Rankin, who you pick from here and he becomes a top 6 from here on in, a top 6 forward, then good on you. But I just think there's so much data we've seen now. We've seen 16 rounds of data, and there's plenty suggesting that those Bulldogs boys are clearly the best scorers, and you've just got to get them in your side. Even though it looks like a concentration risk, you just got to get them in. So it's a no for me at Rankin, but good luck if you do go down that route.
If you had him already, though, like Mac here, I think you're keeping him, mate. You're not going to trade him out, use a trade to get rid of him when you've only got 3 trades.
No. You got to hold him out because he's actually improving, I suspect, as well. So his scoring's improved. I'd be holding.
Yeah, Dan Batten, Taylor's in a similar spot to you. Just going back, just to finish off on the discussion about luxury trades before we get into some captain options. Leave your B, C, and C options in the comments for us. We'll talk about ours in a second. 5 trades left. Strengthen on-field players or strengthen bench cover for the run home. Looks like it's got a bit of cover there. Firstly, I think you just got to get, if you're missing the top end guys on any of the lines, I think that's where you got to start. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Al touched on the point earlier that, you can plan all for everything you want with these players, and you may end up just getting the worst score. You take a 90 from that player you're looping, and then I guess Tim was in that situation over the weekend. I think he took a lesser score and then missed out on Nick Dacos' 140. So I think you are better off.
Don't remind him, Dan.
Triggering. He came into the chat just filthy about the weekend, and it's like, mate, you scored 2,738.
Yeah, I know.
You ended up finishing 250th in the round, but so I guess some people were never happy with their Supercoach team. But I would definitely be strengthening the on-field. If you got a Short or potentially a Cripps in that position, I'd be doing that for sure.
Now, Abdul, I think, is the coach we speak about in the top 10 with no trades.
Yeah.
Abdul, please confirm that in the comments if that's you. I'll quickly answer that question. We played forward last week. Sort of too little, too late for Weir. I don't think he will be a DPP come next week. Let us know, though, if you are the Abdul with no trades left inside.
I think that is him. I think it has to be.
Quickly, Ryan's also ranked 27th, flying up the ranks with 3 trades left. Picked up Hall last week. Only one team above you in the top 26 has Hall. Interesting one. Dan Magala, what do you think? Would you jump off and play it safe or bringing in a Dale? Or good option to turn Weir into a Coleman, who will be then your sort of loophole option, maybe once Hall comes back, only miss 1 or 2.
I'd love to. I don't have to off the top of my head when the Roos play, and I suspect because they're not going to draw too many eyes to the television, it might be Sunday. So I'm thinking that you'll get a chance to have a look at Weir perhaps to see how he goes. But it looks like Hall is actually on the minus side of things. He's done a quad. He was running laps yesterday. I've got a friend that's been writing every single report on Hall at the moment, which is pretty funny. But look, you've got 3 trades, 7 weeks to go. There's plenty of carnage. On average, we're seeing a player in our team every week get injured. So I think you just got to play Weir and just back this young fella in who's getting better each week. Hall could be a really good, a bit of a kryptonite selection for the end of the year, because if he gets back to his best, he has a monopoly on those kickouts, and he should get back to there. But if you are at 27th, as they say in Gattaca, you don't want to say anything but to send back. So maybe you do just firstly, have a squiz at Weir. If it's good enough and Hall plays later in the round, take it and buy another week of time to recover that quad. If not, just trade him out for Bailey Dale, because while Caleb Daniels out with what was a knee injury, I think he had surgery, perhaps maybe like a laparoscope or something like that, whatever he had. That generally means a bit of time on the sidelines, and that'll mean that Bailey Dale has a monopoly at the Bulldogs, and he did on the weekend. And he's an elite user, kicks these things at probably the grass cutters, really. They don't even go above the ground, really. They're so flat. But he's a cracking player and one of the most consistent ones who could probably, in my opinion, sneak his way into the top 4 or 5 defenders from here on in for the rest of the season. He's just a great disposal and goal kicker for the Dogs, a bit of a defensive weapon.
Yeah, unfortunately, North play the Magpies the first game on Saturday afternoon. It's not going to get much option to probably look at any options before Hall's locked out. But I guess with Ryan there, it depends where he wants to finish from that point. You can play it safe and you might sort of hover there in the 20s. But if you keep Hall and you can get a few points out of Weir and Hall comes back, maybe only misses a week, he's your ticket up the rankings. I don't think you're not going to sort of climb into the top 10 or 5 or the top 11 and get a tracksuit by trying to follow what everyone else is doing. I don't think. So, Ryan, I would try to play a Weir, hope Hall comes back, and then he's your big point of difference, comes back and goes big, and he could be ticket to a tracksuit. So, and he's just come back and said he's going for the win. I think
he's not interested in a tracksuit, fans. He's up to 50.
Well, yes.
Sorry, just in saying that, Dale's got 5% ownership, and he's got Caleb Daniel out for probably the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's not the worst. It's not the worst shout either way. Sorry to confuse you even more, Ryan. But
what's he giving up week on week?
I wonder what his ownership is in the top 25. Probably wouldn't be that high, but yeah, you could check that if Dale's ownership is quite high in that top 25, and then sort of assess from there, I reckon.
And what's he really giving up though? Like if Werr scores, let's say best case 80 for the next 2 weeks, and Bailey Dale scores 105, he's giving up 50 points. Like, what if there's carnage and there's a big period of 2 weeks where he's got 2 donuts, he gives up 200 points. So there's like that sort of factor you got to take into. But he's going for glory. Like, I mean, you don't want to sit in your hands and then get to round 23 and say you lost Supercoach by 5 points because you held on to Aaron Hall for too long. Like, sometimes you've got to make a call, unfortunately.
That is true.
And it is Abdul, the high-ranked coach with no trades there. So good luck. We hope not a lot of carnage comes your way. Captains for round 17. We'll go around the group here. Again, let us know what you're thinking, your VC and C options. Peyton, what do you think? What are you leaning towards this week? Clary Oliver, obviously playing Thursday night. Are you locking him in?
Well, Clary obviously in unbelievable form. I think he's averaging 147 over his past 6 or something like that. And he has a pretty decent record against Geelong as well. In an ideal world, I think Lachie Neale is the number one standout captain this week, a bit like Clary was last week. His record against Essendon is unbelievable. Scored 198 against them in, I think it was round 2 this year. And Ben Rutten sort of defended not tagging him, that day. So I don't even know if they've got anyone who they could run with him anyway. And he scored 150 against them last year, I think. So he's definitely my number one option. I think what I would like to be able to do is put the VC on Neale, and then if just something happens to go wrong, have a backup in someone like Rory Laird against the Hawks. I think could go really well, or even if you've got Dawson, is a possibility. But it requires you'd have to have someone in the last 2 games, Hawthorn v Adelaide or West Coast v Carlton, who you'd be happy to put the captaincy on in an emergency, and also you need a loophole in those games, which I don't have. Well, it depends. I've got Greg Clark. So if I don't have to use him to trade, if Braden Preuss plays and I keep Greg Clark, I could use him. Otherwise, I don't have a loophole in those games. So it probably is just straightforward Clary into Neale. Although the other one that I reckon could go really big is Tuke Miller. Scored 150 something last week. He scored 153 against Richmond last year. Richmond obviously don't really tag. Dusty's out of the midfield. Hoping Prestia might be back. There's no Cochin as well. Midfielders tend to score well against Richmond, and there are a few players down in there. And you've got Jared Witts up against Nank, who's a great around the grounds ruckman, but doesn't win a heap of the hitouts. So I think he'll get some pretty silver service up at Metricon. So I'll be expecting him to go pretty big as well.
Yep. Dan Batten, just bear in mind, Geordie Barr is a Geelong supporter. Suggest Mark O'Connor can tag the hell out of Clary Oliver and keep under 80. Now, the only thing I do start to think about is because O'Connor is a good size. He's got sort of the body and the physique to sort of run around with Clary Oliver, who is hard to stop, full stop. So, are you concerned, Dan Batten, or are you going to lock him in?
Not particularly, considering Oliver's a ridiculous run in the past few weeks. He hasn't scored under 134 since round 11. So it was a 113 in round 11, and then it was a 178 the week before against North. So he's been on an absolute tear. Has a good record against the Cats as well, 159 and 130 in his last 2 games there. But I think the fallback option, obviously, you've always got Lachie Neale as the fallback. He's had 17 Brownlow votes. Just having a look at the old reliable AFL table. 17 Brownlow votes in 12 games against the Dons, and I reckon the last 2 games have been 3 voters for him. He's just been absolutely dominant against them. So I think it just has to be Clayton Oliver into Lachie Neale, and then I guess if you after a Smokey or a little bit of a point of difference pick, then I think it's probably a Tuke Miller or potentially a Jared Witts.
Dan Magala.
Well, I think I'm on the same track as Dan Batten. Like, I think we've got to trust the app sometimes, because I think last week it forecasted Clary to get 193, and I think he practically achieved that. So, I mean, let's just look at this. Like, I actually rationalise like this. I haven't seen Mark O'Connor do any substantial tagging jobs this year. Maybe it's Atkins, maybe it's someone else that comes in. But the way I perceive it is that doesn't this actually look like an opportunity for Clary? Like, the harder he gets worn, the higher his contested numbers go up. Like, he's just going to go and benefit from that. Like, you saw his hands against Adelaide Phantom. You're watching it closely. He was firing out some of the most extraordinary handballs I think I've ever seen a footballer do. Like, they were like lightning quick, getting tackled at the bottom of the pack when they're about to blow the whistle. He's a freak. Like, I'd love to put my house on the Brownlow on this bloke. He's home and hosed, in my opinion. Like, there's no one out there except maybe Cripps or Brayshaw or someone like that, or Neale. But I'm going to go Clary tonight, into Neil and be pretty comfortable if Clary does have a down game, which I don't think he will. Neil will get the job done, but it'd be a very ambitious coach out there to not put the VC on probably the hottest player in the comp right now. Like he's in absolute ripping form, and the closer this game seems to be, the more swings there are in scoring, the more inflated scores that come through. And when the game's in the throws and at the coalface, who do you think's going to be there? It's going to be Track, Gawn, and Oliver. So I'm going to back him in to do something special again tonight. He loves it down there. And last year with Gawn, it was he and Gawn that got them to that top spot and possibly just cleared the final series for them. Got the home game, not the home games, the easier fixtures, and they got home. So Clary gets it done tonight into Neil if warranted. But what if Clary gets 128? Do you roll the dice into Neil? That's a bit of an ambitious thing to do as well. But that's what guys like Ryan, who are sitting at 27th, will have to consider. That's why the run home's pretty anxiety-provoking for those out there at the top end, like the Phantom and like Moira's Magic, if that's how you pronounce it.
Well put. It is probably a bit too cute. I'm considering maybe a Callum Mills on Friday night who could go really big. That would probably mean overlooking Clary, which I'm not set on yet, but definitely someone in to see. But again, you're probably making me think there that maybe I am going to get too cute if I overlook Clary, and it could come back to bite me. Let's finish off, I think, here with our KFC SuperCoach Zinger of the Week. We'll go back to it. If you've just joined us, we're talking about Dan Bagala's artwork. We talk about all the time. Can I get a pair of binoculars for Dan Batten's artwork, says Adrian. We cannot see it. Here we go. What is it?
Let's get a close-up look there. What do you reckon, guys?
There it is.
Interior decoration. What's the...
Yep. So done by Mrs. Batten. Can we buy it anywhere, or do you want to give her a plug?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just hit her up at I'll leave the number in the description after. What are we thinking? What do you think it's worth, guys? Antiques Roadshow.
Take it to the NGB, mate. Put it in the Picasso exhibition.
Treasure for me, I reckon. Treasure for me.
It's bigger than it looked on the screen. It looked like
it sure is. So we'll be selling it off later on Marketplace.
Very good, Adrian. Now, Geordie Barr, thanks for joining us. He tried to get the Zinger of the Week. He fired out a few barbs, but I think Adrian Butler takes the cake. I think that'll wrap us. That'll do us here on KFC SuperCoach TV for round 17. Another big game on Thursday night. All your advice, last-minute analysis, codesports.com.au, heraldsun.com.au, advertiser.com.au. Out, Dan and the People's Champ, Dan Bagala. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks for letting the Phantom take the reins of the show. Might be back to a bit more normal next week. Buy Dan's artwork. Hit him up at Dan_Batten_ on Twitter. And we'll see you all next week. Good luck with another big weekend of KFC SuperCoach.